One thing that I have noticed about ambitious, high powered, highly capable entrepreneurs and business owners is that we are really, really good at pushing through. And we're often not so good at resting and sometimes taking care of ourselves. So I'm dedicating this Pisces season of podcast episodes to the topic of well-being. Well-being, wellness, self-care is absolutely a requirement of the best CEOs out there. It's not about hustle and grind and forget about taking care of yourself. I'll sleep when I'm dead. It's just not about that anymore. Your best work, your best, most creative, most high quality, high value work comes when you are at your best. And you're actually able to enjoy the fruits of your labor when you are rested and taken care of. And you're actually able to open and receive more and more and more levels of financial success, emotional success, all of the different types of success when you are taken care of. You deserve that. So I don't want to hear about any of this, like, let's punish ourselves to the top. That's just not how it works. And truly wealthy people know that as well. So I want us to be truly wealthy in all ways. And so we're going to talk today with our incredible guest, Colleen, about somatic healing and emotional alchemy. These are things that the best of the best have support for, know how to do in the moment. And we got to do that too. So I'm very excited if you have felt at the edge of burnout, if you have felt this sense of, oh my God, I'm just grinding and grinding, and where is the joy? And I'm grinding and grinding, and where is the fulfillment? And I'm grinding and grinding, and where is the sleep? Then this episode is for you. We have to build our capacity, build the tools in our tool chest so that we can create, do, and hold more. I'm so excited for this episode. Tune in and enjoy. Welcome back to the Bold Business Podcast. I am so excited to have a very special guest in the studio, so to speak, with us today. We have an amazing topic that we're going to be diving into with Colleen. I'll introduce her in just a second, but welcome, Colleen.
Hi.
Hi. This season, Pisces season, we are covering the theme of well-being here on the podcast. And this is the Bold Business Podcast. You might think, well, what does this have to do with my business strategy? Well, what does this have to do with, my big goals and big dreams and ambitions? Well, everything. This has everything to do with those. And we know that you can't really climb the mountain if you are exhausted, if you are burned out, if you are, fighting the, subconscious patterns of the past, like every step of the way. So we want to, bring to this podcast tools, tips, advice, mentorship, and support for everyone. This is a big year. If you hear me talk about the astrology and the human design of 2025, it's a big year of change. If you look at the numerology, this year is about letting go and shedding, which I think is really cool. If you look at the Chinese zodiac symbol of the year is the snake, right? Oh, how amazing.
Yes.
Shedding the skin. So we've got to shed the old ways, the old habits, the old identities that no longer serve us. And a lot of us are looking at tools like somatic healing, and then also things like emotional alchemy, which we're going to learn a lot about today from Colleen. So let me introduce her. I'm so excited to dive into this topic. So Colleen Nelson is a trauma therapist turned somatic healer, embodiment coach, and expert in emotional alchemy. She is dedicated to helping women reconnect with their bodies, reclaim their pleasure, and heal from chronic stress and trauma. With a compassionate and empowering approach, Colleen guides women on a transformative journey from people-pleasing and overwhelm to a life of peace, presence, and full self-expression. Drawing on her expertise in somatic practices, EMDR, nervous system healing, and the art of emotional alchemy. She provides tools and insights to help women unlock their power, expand their capacity for joy, and truly take up space in their lives. Through her work as a coach, teacher, and facilitator, Colleen is on a mission to help women return to themselves and live boldly from a place of authenticity and fulfillment. Welcome, Colleen. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Yes, yes. You're exactly who we need to talk to right now. And who better to teach us? I mean, in this year of the Pisces North Node in Pisces season, but a Pisces. So, yeah, this is just
Yes.
the stars happened to align for when I wanted to invite you onto this podcast. How did you, before we get into things, because I'd love to talk about yeah, somatic healing, what is it? Emotional alchemy. But how did you kind of come into this work? I know you said you're a
Mm,
therapist, first of all, but what kind of made you kind of take that pivot to be the evolved therapist and really also
yeah.
support people with coaching as well?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I started in therapy, I would say probably 15 years ago. And I was working in the system. I was working in community mental health, detox, hospitals, things like that.
Mhm.
And what was really tough for me is I continued to see people just, we call it the circle back, right? They would get a little
Um,
bit better, and then they would just circle back. And then I'd get a
mm,
little bit better, and they'd circle back.
mm,
And then I got into private practice, and it was the same thing with talk therapy. We'd have, some deeper understanding. We'd have some mindset work. We'd figure out new paths, and then just the circle back of the pattern, especially in
mhm,
relationships, right? With any attachment trauma and abandonment, we all
mm.
circle back to the same patterns. And
Yeah.
the more I was working with people, I saw that it was across the board. I mean, it was across socioeconomic status, it was across all populations of people. It was just this consistent, human experience of circling back to old patterns. And
Mm.
then I was lucky enough to get involved in kind of like a groundbreaking research with trauma therapy,
Wow.
body-based healing. So,
This is what I want to
somatic
learn more
ex-
about. I'm just like my
yes.
route, yeah, my route into coaching was through like astrology, but also through a lot of mindset work. And I just recognize the power of the body. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm so excited
Yes.
to learn more.
So, there's a lot of different approaches to healing through the body.
Hmm.
And some of the top researchers, Peter Levine would be right at the top. He's the kind of father of somatic experiencing. And he did a lot of research on how the nervous system, which is located in the back of our brain, overrides the frontal cortex, is in the front of our brain, our thinking brain,
Hmm.
if it is in any sort of survival state: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right?
Hmm.
And so no matter what we're thinking, like let's say a grizzly bear were to pop in here right now, I'm not going to be like, well, I thought that I needed to turn off my coffee pot before I left, so I should probably do, I'm going to be screaming and running out the door.
Hmm.
There's no thoughts are going to happen.
Hmm.
So our bodies are very unique, and we store trauma unlike any other species. I'd say elephants are like our closest,
Really?
besides other primates.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's really interesting. Okay.
So we store trauma, whereas other animals process it through, usually pretty immediately after. They go through a bit of a cycle in their nervous system to reset back to zero. We
Like
don't.
when
We
they
kind
like
of,
shake it off
store.
after being chased by the lion. Like,
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
Mm.
yes, exactly. So primates, elephants, we stop the process. We kind of divert it. Now, granted, that's made us survive, right, circumstances. But what it ends up doing is that it ends up creating a blueprint in our nervous system on how to survive.
Mm.
And, we have evolved quite rapidly as a species, and we no longer live in hunter-gatherer. We no longer live in tribes, and we are desperately trying to adapt to the modern world, and part of our brain is not quite equipped for that. And so, as our frontal cortex is making all of these big plans and big, exciting thoughts and innovations and, really evolutionary thoughts, our back brain is like, but wait a second, we don't want to die. right? Like it's
Yeah.
just
I feel
so
like I can definitely identify with that. Oh, but we've got
yes,
all these new cool things that we're doing, and look at this technology, and look at, and yeah, I don't want to die at the same time.
exactly. Exactly. So this is where all of these, depression, anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, like we're not sleeping well. I mean, so many of our common issues in relationships, right? Like trying to actually have relationships that make them last. It really comes back to this blueprint that's kind of needing to be rewired in our brain.
Mm, amazing. Wow. I love that you are so eloquent and able to translate this for us because I think that a lot of times there's like a lot of us have learned a lot of therapy speak, right? Like we kind of, we can kind of get along, go along to get along. But you're someone who I see as like translating things from a very academic, intellectual view to practical, like, okay, and then this is how you can actually use this in your life. And like, I just want to say, like, thank you for your service because I think this is
Oh.
so essential, especially for people who do have a lot of ideas, that really busy frontal cortex. They have a lot of things
Hmm.
they want to go and do. So tell us what is somatic healing? If you could kind of summarize it in everyday speak. I think a lot of people use this term. It's a big buzzword right now,
Hmm.
somatic healing. I hear a lot of people claiming to be experts, but what's your take? What is it?
Well, let's be super clear about somatic therapy versus somatic healing. I think that's super important too. Is somatic therapy means you're certified and trained in some sort of somatic therapeutic approach, somatic experiencing, EMDR, brain spotting. I'm naming some buzzwords, but
Yes.
that's you got a certificate, right? You got a licensure, you got a certificate. You can practice therapeutically, which I think is a crucial difference here. I am certified in EMDR. I have containment and resolution, which is an offset of somatic experiencing certification. So I've got some somatic therapy training as well because I'm a licensed therapist in Colorado.
Mhm.
But somatic healing, and the reason why I say I'm a somatic healer is because I actually want to step beyond that a little bit. Not that
Mhm.
that's not important, but I really believe in the healing powers of the collective and in particular women. And I think those of us that gather together, regardless of gender, have an extraordinary ability to heal each other somatically. So let me
Mhm.
explain what that means.
Okay, yeah, tell us more.
So somatic is soma, body, right? It's body-based healing. So it is using our back part of the brain, so amygdala and hindbrain, which is our emotional center, and then our nervous system center, to heal rather than using our thoughts and kind of our higher evolved thinking. It's like sitting down and giving me a hug. That's somatic healing.
Mm-hmm.
Breath work, that's
Mm-hmm.
somatic healing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yes.
I'm also trained in somatic release breath work. I did a bunch of trainings there for a bit. I went on a whole rampage, but
You're a
like
second line
the
like me. We love learning
yes,
and all the things and pulling it all
it's so
together in a
true.
unique way. Yeah, in human
It's so
design.
true. I'm like, what else can I learn?
Yeah.
So it's really about body-based healing. So this is why it's such a buzzword because it does apply to a lot. I
Yeah.
sit in a circle of women on the new moon. That's somatic healing.
Hmm. It's like a big
I
tent for several different tools, but all connecting back to the body. Mm.
Yeah, dancing. But it's why I think why healing is the word I want to kind of combine with it is
Mhm.
that the purpose is to create a sense of safety and connection and
Mhm.
belonging in your body, right? So that's how we heal. We're
Mhm.
healing from a place of disconnection, lack of safety, and abandonment.
Mm. Mm.
So this is different than somatic therapy, right? Like,
Mhm.
so that's why people have to be careful with the words they use. But if you say you're a somatic therapist, please have some training, right? If you say
Yeah.
you're a somatic healer, yeah, you are. Yes, you are. We all
Mhm.
are. That's wonderful. Let's all do that. Let's co-regulate, please. I would love that, right? Like, so I have no problem with that word being used as long as people understand some of the things that can come up when we do start to do this healing work. And so if you're a facilitator of this work, I think you do need to understand what that actually means and what can happen when people start to actually heal in their bodies.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I love how you break it down and describe it as, when you're doing your somatic healing, the goal, I guess you could say, is the safety, stability, and would you say groundedness as well, like feeling grounded, or how would you describe?
I would say the word grounded. I'm so particular with words, I think.
Yeah.
Just because when we get to emotional alchemy, they're a big piece of that. So groundedness is a ubiquitous term that is like, it's helpful visualizing, like we visualize being grounded, but really it's actually being present. Being in our bodies and present is a sense of being grounded. Safety is very different. You can feel safe and be very ungrounded, because if a grizzly bear comes in and I'm fighting the grizzly bear, right? And then I beat the grizzly bear, I feel safe, but I'm not grounded. I'm high as a kite on adrenaline, right? Right? Like, but I'm safe. So I think grounded is like present, calm, collected, associated. Associated means like I'm feeling in my body. So again, all of these words can be different for other people. This is how I define them specifically when I'm working with clients, because it's so powerful to understand I can feel safe but ungrounded. I can feel grounded but unsafe.
Yes.
Right?
No,
Like,
so
so
yeah,
they're,
you're hitting a lot of like light bulbs for me right now, because I've been thinking a lot about the revolutionariness of this year, 2025, and thinking about, well, how can we be embracing change but be grounded? And you just
yes,
illustrated the difference in the
yes,
the way we understand that. So it's not grounded, it's present and it's stable
yes,
and safe, instead of focusing on the groundedness, because groundedness is like rooted and it's not moving. Whereas this year is
correct.
such a year of water and fire, and it is a year of movement. It is a year of change. It is a year of letting go. And will you say something about that? About like, how do we let go, and how can somatic healing maybe support us with that, the shedding kind of process?
Oof, okay. Letting go is one of the most challenging things, I think, for the human species, because we are so, our back brain, I'm going to say, separate from our spirit, separate from our heart, separate from our mind, right? We're all about change in those areas of our body. But I'd say our human body that we've chosen to come
Hmm.
into is all about what is known. What is known is safe to our hindbrain, right? That is what keeps us alive.
Right.
The known threat is better than the unknown piece.
Unknown. Is the devil you know versus the devil you don't, right? That's what the saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So there is a level of compassion we have to have with our bodies
Mm.
around the discomfort that we feel with change. And we have to surrender to kind of that higher spirit, higher self, and be okay with the discomfort our body is embracing in order to accommodate said change, and understand that discomfort is an essential part of growth.
Mm.
So I'll use an example of like a breakup, right?
I was just thinking that. It's so funny. I was gonna give that example. Yeah, because your identity is shifting
Yes.
with your situation shifting, right? Yeah. Okay. Say more.
Yes.
Yeah, say more.
Yes. So I recently went through a breakup in January, and what was really powerful for me in healing my body, somatically healing, was allowing my body to have these little moments of discomfort and pain and grief that didn't make a lot of sense to my mind. You know, logically, the relationship needed to end for a variety of reasons. But like my body would, I like doubled over when I saw cinnamon next to my coffee pot, because he liked cinnamon on his lattes. So
Mm.
that's my body noticing here is a discrepancy in my
Hmm.
routine and my life. And so a lot of people be very hard on themselves. Like, why do I care about cinnamon? Why do I, like, why is my body doing this? And when you push away, deny, attack, shame, your body for its responses to change,
Mhm.
it actually escalates that fear response, the survival response, because your body's like, oh no, you're not listening. Like, this is really scary for us. I almost talk to our bodies a little bit like they're children, you know, like this back part of our brain is more like our 10-year-old, you know, it's like, it's okay. Like, you know, yes, the cinnamon is, let's put the cinnamon back in the spice cabinet.
Mhm.
Now we don't see it every morning. Let's take a deep breath. So to answer your question more directly, compassion, a pause, an acknowledgement of what your body is feeling is super important with any change. And then honestly, I always come back to breath, and putting my hands on my body where I feel that pain. So if it's in my solar plexus, I put my hands on my solar plexus and I take a big deep breath and I'm like, I see you. Whatever this is, I see you. The 1,000 little cuts that come from a breakup, you know, like, and so with all change that we're dealing with right now, especially the big change, I think there's a lot of fear in our bodies, understandably so. And just being able to acknowledge it with compassion and not try and rush through feeling better or feeling
Mhm.
okay with it all.
Yeah, because I think, human design, human, well, I don't know what I was going to say there, but human beings are natural fixers. Like, we want to fix things and we're like, oh, I
Hmm.
feel bad. I got to fix that. And what you're saying is to actually slow it down, because true presence is acknowledging and accepting the feeling and the physical reaction and the emotional reaction before choosing the next state, right?
So I will here. This is I was going to use this with emotional alchemy, but I'm gonna tell
I
you
know we're
this
kind
now
of
because
going
it's
into that.
it's both. It's yes and right because somatic healing involves emotional alchemy. So there's sensations, there's feelings, and then there's the thoughts or the story.
Okay.
So the sensation is the pain in my solar plexus, the tension in my shoulders, the pain in my heart. That's sensation in my body when I saw the cinnamon, right? The feeling is grief, pain, sadness. So I'm naming it. I'm using words to name the sensation in my body. That's me stopping, naming the sensation, and acknowledging that it's there. And then the story is the piece that we get lost on quite a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know, this and this and this. I shouldn't think about this, or who cares? It's just cinnamon, whatever, you know.
I
The
always get
thought,
trapped with I always choose the wrong person, right? Like these stories, like
exactly.
we always make it mean something about something that's wrong with us, something we did wrong.
Yes,
We always, we never, yeah, that's the story,
yes,
isn't it? Mhm.
exactly. Oh, I'm always going to feel this pain, you know. And so somatic healing is about being able to allow the sensation in your body without shutting it down.
Mhm.
Name the emotional experience from a place of, I think, education and awareness. That's a lot of what I do, is help people understand the connection between the two.
Mhm.
And then have the story be something that's transformative or alchemizing, right? Like, so I'm like, oh, here's another moment in which I get to recognize how much I loved him. Oof, yes.
Mhm.
Right? Like
Mhm.
that's a powerful statement. And then the emotion that I feel now is love. So I move from grief to love. That's the
That.
alchemization.
Instead
Yeah.
of what I think like Brene Brown talks a lot about, moving
Hmm.
from grief to shame, right?
There you go.
Like, I
Correct.
had this emotion, I feel this sensation, and I'm shaming myself for it. And then what happens when we do that? Like, from
Mm,
a therapy or somatic healing point of view, when we shame or suppress or ignore or like whatever it is, what's happening
mm.
body? What's going on there?
So first of all, the part of our brain that is not our hindbrain, so our frontal cortex, is trying to get back control.
Mm.
We're trying to make it about us because if it's about us, then we can change it.
Ah,
So
oh,
if we have
so interesting. Okay, yeah.
if
Mhm.
we have shame is a lot about control and power. So if
Yeah.
we can get back into a place of control and power, if it's all about us and we're bad and we're wrong, then there's some level of like avoidance of powerlessness and like the acceptance of like people just you know people just harming us because they harm us sometimes, right? Because of their own stuff. Like it makes us feel safer to be in control.
Yeah.
So
It's like we're
shame is
trying to
about trying.
explain it. And if we explain it and we somehow have a fault in it, then we can control. That's so interesting. I've never quite heard someone explain it that way. Thank you for that. I think that's a gift for a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, because I don't want to. I don't want people to shame themselves for shaming themselves, right? You are shaming
Yeah.
yourself because that's what you learned as a kid, because
Mhm.
you couldn't control your caregivers. You learned as a kid that if it's about you, then you can still love your caregivers and be part of that family and
Right.
still be okay and safe,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So as adults, we go to shame because we want to get control and power back. And what happens in our body is we go to one of two places. We either shut it down and repress. So that means it gets stored in our body. It goes to a part of our hindbrain, and then maybe we push it into our gut, and we have IBS later that day, or maybe we push it up and out and get acid reflux,
Mhm.
or we go into a state of overwhelm, which means we flood our system. So neurobiologically, we're flooding our system with a ton of chemicals so that we numb out. And
Mm.
that's exhausting and really bad for your nervous system and body, right? So a lot of chronic illness, chronic pain, a lot of like typical symptoms that we have in our bodies that we treat in the day to day is repressed emotions,
Mhm.
honestly.
That would be my MO, like that I've been doing a lot of work over the past, gosh, like even at this point, 20 years on, is the repression. And for me, it's like, things like emotional eating or,
Yes.
I have a tendency to be hyper independent. So I'm like, I don't need to talk to anyone. I can hold it in. I can deal with it on my own. I'm sure a lot of people who, especially my entrepreneurs, the people who are, yeah, probably listening to this podcast are very like, oh, I'll just solve it myself. I'll just fix it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'll solve it. I don't need to feel these things. I've got too much to do. I'm
Yeah.
going to push it aside. Hyperindependence is a big response in our system. Like, I'm just going to take it all on. And it leads to burnout and exhaustion and overwhelm. And our bodies, are very, very wise. And most of the time, when our bodies are sending us a message, it's for a reason. And we don't
Mhm.
always like the reason, but it's purposeful. We'll say that.
Mhm. Mhm. We got to listen, right? I love that. So
We do.
what are some, you gave us already some tips kind of in the moment when these things are happening. You talked about, taking a moment, taking a pause, taking a full breath and putting our hands on the place in our body where we feel the sensation. Are there any
Yes.
other like in the moment emergency tips we can remember that Coco told us? Do you have
Yes, yes,
anything else like
yes.
that for us?
Yes, I do. So when you feel a fear response, which most of us call anxiety, right?
Hmm.
It's a fear response. We name it anxiety, which is sometimes a good thing, sometimes not, right?
Yeah.
When you tell your body, I shouldn't be feeling this fear, then sometimes
Yeah.
we have anxiety about anxiety, right? So
Mhm.
let's say I'm feeling a fear response in my body. The last thing I want to do is tell my body to calm down. The last thing I want to do is actually take deep breaths. The last thing I want to do is actually get grounded, because if my body is experiencing a fear response, I need to move. I need to move my body. So you can shake, you can jump up and down, you could run in place for 30 seconds,
Mm.
you can push against a wall. Moving your body is going to help you with that fear response. Then you step into the calming, right? So it's like you're listening to your body. Okay, you think a tiger's coming. I get it. There's no tiger, but I'm going to run in place for 30 seconds, and then I'm going to do my square breathing,
Mm.
Then I'm going to root into my body and ground. When we override or try to override that fear response and tell our bodies to calm down, it usually escalates. Or, like I said, floods our system and numbs out, which a lot of people think is calm. Numb is not calm. Numb
Yeah.
is disconnected and disassociated.
Yeah.
And so we are meant to be wavy. And I think that we have to kind of embrace that nature and work with it rather than against it.
Mm. It's so interesting. A lot of the tools you mentioned, like pushing against the wall, shaking it out, I've heard those a lot in parenting because, like, my son is
Mm-hmm.
years old, has big feelings, like all kids have and should. And I've been trying to learn as well, like, okay, how do I help him process that? Because kids can't process it on their own, right? And that's a lot of the same techniques that people talk about is like have them push against your hands, have them push on the wall. So it's so interesting to hear you share that for all of us, and it makes so much sense. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, makes so much sense.
I know. I love the things we'll do for our kids, but turn around and don't do the same for ourselves.
Right, right. It's like take our own medicine. Um,
Yes.
Wonderful. Where do you see? I'm curious, just relating this back to kind of entrepreneurship and working
Mm-hmm.
with people who have businesses. I know a lot of your clients are entrepreneurs or very, career focused. Where do you
Mm-hmm.
see? I'm trying to figure out exactly what my question is. Like, where do you
Yeah.
see most of the fears coming through? Is it like,
Mm.
I saw kind of a popular quote in the coaching world is like, you start to have all of your fears come up when you're just about to move to the next level or when you're just bursting through one of your blocks, right? Where are there
Yeah.
any particular patterns that you see in like ambitious women or ambitious entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
that we should kind of make ourselves aware of so that we can support ourselves through,
Yeah.
especially in business. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say so. Two different things happen here. So I always see burnout. Okay,
Uh,
burnout and overwhelm is like
yeah.
top of the list. And
And what does that look like
this,
for you? Like, what does that look like from your perspective? 'Cause, I mean,
you lose interest in what you are passionate about.
mm,
And
mhm,
and the you're pushing through something that used to feel joys, enjoyment. Like so joy, pleasure, bliss, those lighter feelings, those
mhm,
sensations of play are
mhm,
gone. Now you're
mhm.
just in like the doing.
Yeah.
And a lot of what you're feeling is fear, anger, and sadness. And it is largely because in entrepreneurship and in the business world, we are risk taking a lot.
Yeah.
And so our body is feeling a lot of things as we do this
Mhm,
investments with money,
mhm.
time, putting yourself out there like this. This is a lot of people are watching this. So, like
Oh,
being
yeah.
seen.
Podcasting. Hmm.
Exactly. So, that is, there's a little bit of a fear response in your body to some of those things because they're risky. Maybe not to your frontal cortex, but they're risky to your back brain. Like I'm being exposed, right? Or I'm in a vulnerable state with this amount of money I've invested, or the amount of time I've put into this, or sometimes it's like the self-sacrifice. Like, oh, I've chosen not to do all of these things so that I could invest in my business,
Hmm.
and I've taken time away from my family to be in my business, and I'm not seeing the results that I expected to see. And so
Hmm.
that's when people, it's like right on that edge, that's when people hit burnout.
Yeah.
Because results vary and they'll come whether you're burned out or not, but it is to actually receive what comes on the other side of that, which is joy, bliss, play, pleasure, abundance. Our bodies need to be in a place of receiving. And so
Hmm.
when we're in survival mode, we're not there.
Hmm.
So I often see people when you say it's like right before you hit that point,
Yeah.
it's like they have to recalibrate their nervous system to this next level of
Mhm.
receiving in order for self-sabotage to not happen,
Yes.
right? And
I
so
feel like I'm
I
in that
see
right
that often.
now. Yeah, I feel like but there's probably a lot of people listening, but I feel like I'm in that right now. Like I'm seeing some renewed wave of success in my business, especially with my social media platforms and then people coming in to work with me. And then I'm thinking I'm getting ready to make some new moves. And then it's like, okay, okay, I recognize that I'm in this, like you said, on that edge of needing
Hmm.
to be present and needing to feel
Yes.
safe and stable as you make the change. So I'm loving
Yes.
that.
You have
Powerful.
to rewire you have to rewire your nervous system.
Yeah.
And this is where somatic work is key. For most business owners to move from, 5K a month to 10K a month to 20K a
Hmm.
month, We talk a lot about this, and this was the biggest issue I had with the coaching world in the last 5 years is coaches would sell this idea of 100K months, but without doing the work to help your nervous system calibrate to that level,
Mhm.
and the amount of responsibility that comes on your shoulders in your business when you start to recalibrate, we self-sabotage in very little ways. We don't always realize we're doing it. And those are the things that, honestly, if somebody can get to a place where they help their nervous system recalibrate to this higher receptivity,
Mhm.
this change that we're kind of asking for, that's when it comes. That's when more clients come. That's when
Mhm.
you get those opportunities. There's a spiritual, universal component, energetic component here too. I'm not necessarily speaking to,
Mhm.
but like, it's like my body is actually ready to receive that. We attract what we are, right? And
Mhm.
so
100%. Yeah.
just like with relationships, right? If I want to be a high value coach, I need to be ready to attract high value clients. And what
Mhm.
does that look like, and how does that feel? And it really comes back to like, can I take care of myself while also running this business? Because if
Yeah.
I can't, I'm gonna sabotage it one way or another.
Yes, it's so interesting because like my work started off, I really resonate with what you're saying. My work started off like coaching people mostly around branding and identity, and that's usually the gateway through which people come to work with me. But then this year and towards the end of last year, it's really I'm developing this whole new aspect around productivity, which is basically about dealing with burnout and using human design and astrology in order to support your lifestyle, right? And I
Yes.
hear that's a lot what you're saying is how do I actually support myself in my business, not just the strategy of what I'm doing in my business. And I think that's what we got to do because or else it's not sustainable what we're doing and we're not able to hold more as we grow. So I love this. What would be the like the beginners tool that you would recommend for people to start with from a somatic healing point of view? And what's like an advanced tool? Like only with support from someone like you.
I would say beginner's tool. I'm always going to say bring it back to the breath.
Okay. Mhm. I love
Different
that.
forms of breath work.
Yeah.
You can literally find it on any meditation app out there. You could Google breath work, like, because it is ultimately the most basic tool we have to help our nervous systems recalibrate.
Hmm.
Breath is where it's at. And yes, you can reach blocks with breath work where you need to have a facilitator and an empathic witness hold you in that space because there's some emotional blocks that are keeping you from moving something through your body, right?
Hmm.
So, but ultimately, breath work patterns, even 5 minutes a day, are gonna reset your morning, reset your afternoon. It's a very powerful tool.
I love
For
breath
instance,
work.
the circular breath. Yep.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not just talking about calming breath like that. I want to make that very clear. I am talking about clearing breaths.
Mm. Like Breath
It's
of
a
Fire, I know
powerful
is a
thing.
big one that like Tony Robbins does. And I've done some like the person who I learned it from called it shamanic breath work. It was essentially
Yes.
very much Breath of Fire, and it felt so clearing. Like we are just clearing this stuff out. It was amazing. Yeah, so that's the kind
Yes.
that I usually like. It's quite intense, but like you're saying, different types of breath work that you can, yeah, start with.
Yes. Exactly. And then I'd say the more advanced stuff is actually the somatic experiencing piece of it, EMDR,
Mm.
which is bilateral stimulation. It's a more scientific term to basically move trauma out of the back part of your brain and
And
clear
this
it
is
out of
with
your
the
body.
for the lay people, this is the eye movement thing. Like,
Yes, or
yeah.
you can
Mhm.
hold buzzies too that go back and forth.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
I've
it
heard
moves, it
amazing things
moves.
from my clients about this,
Oh,
like old childhood traumas, a matter of minutes, reduced, gone, like incredible. And I
yes.
think it's one of those tools that may not work for everyone, but for who it works for, it really, really works. I'd love to try it myself sometime. Yeah.
It's very powerful. And obviously you have to do that with a trained professional, but I think that the more advanced pieces of somatic work are We are primates. We don't want to heal alone. We want to co-regulate. We want to be witnessed. We want to be in a state of belonging while feeling the emotional sensation of fear, abandonment, longing. Like when we are witnessed in that place, that is what heals us.
Mhm.
So we can sit here and do breath work all day. We can go on journeys by ourselves all day. Like that's we're forgetting the collective is actually what heals. It
Mhm.
is not just the individual. If individuals could just heal on their own, we would be in a different world. But like that's not how it works. And so a lot of my work is facilitating being a witness and almost like a lantern in the darkness, right? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
guiding you through your shadows as you're making your way to your light, or just bringing your shadows into the light to reintegrate them as part of you.
Mhm. I love that reminder.
So
Yeah, thank
yeah,
you. Oh, that's
yeah,
powerful. And this is the year of it, with Pisces North Node, like we're all remembering how we're connected, and that's an
yes,
essential part of change, evolution, and alchemy. So on that
yes.
note, before we let you go, you have just been incredible. I want to hear your thoughts on emotional alchemy. What is it, and how can we do it? And alchemy is one of my favorite words, concepts, things in the world. I have a tattoo that says alchemy.
Ooh,
So I'm jazzed to hear your thoughts on what emotional alchemy is.
absolutely. Well, I'll be very specific. This is my personalized definition of it. Some people might describe it differently just because it's one of those newer words.
Sure.
So, emotional alchemy, from my perspective, is when we go back to those sensations and those feelings again, right? It's taking that sensation of that pain in my solar plexus, that like sharp shooting pain in my solar plexus. And there is an acceptance and there is a holding of presence of that sensation in your body to alchemize or change, transform, shift it into a sensation of relief, joy, lightness, warmth. So I'm using specific sensational words, but the emotion would be grief and pain
Mhm.
to love and joy.
Mhm.
Because they're two sides of the same coin. And that's the thing about emotions is that our experience of emotion, like fear and excitement, they're
Yeah.
very similar, right? So it's about,
Mhm.
oh, I'm afraid. How do I alchemize this, aka like get present, allow and see it, and then create space for it to transform into excitement, into action,
Mhm.
into protection, right? So
Mhm.
anger can alchemize into boundaries, right? And like, what does it look like to protect myself?
Mhm.
So it is very much like, how do we take the sensation in our body and these emotions that we deem as negative and shift it into something that our body can take action on, or that we can find some acceptance around, or we can acknowledge as love. You will not grieve something that you haven't loved, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're one and the same. You will not fear something that you are not invested in, right? Like there's a level of investment in fear. So it's this recognition that emotions are fluid and they can flow into something that feels like growth,
Mhm.
right? Like it's how we're growing. It's those aha moments. It's those feelings of things are going to be okay, connectivity. The biggest piece about alchemy, I think, is you move from a place of disconnection to connection. I'm feeling separate
Ooh,
from the
yeah.
world and others. Oh, now I'm feeling connected and associated. And, you know, another reason why it is crucial to have community. When we're all grieving in community, it feels like
Mhm.
love,
It's so
you
true.
know?
It's so true. Yeah, I feel like that with just, what's been happening in grassroots communities like since last year's election. It feels like even though a lot of us, including myself, were very shocked and disappointed, and there's a lot of fear. It's the coming together. People feel more connected than ever. And this is
Yes.
very interesting. So I love how you described it, alchemy, the process of emotional alchemy as going from disconnection, disassociation to connection and association. I haven't thought of it like that, but I love that. It's a change of state. And when I think
Yes.
about a lot of what you've described today is like, talking about cycles and how we're in these cycles, but also about how we can shift into another. Like we look at the natural world, right? And we see, oh, there's a beautiful forest, but then there's a forest fire. But forest fires, in nature, naturally done, are necessary in order to cut away the old branches and ensure that new growth can come. There's so many examples of that. Pressure makes
Hmm.
diamonds, things like that. So many examples in nature. And now we can look at ourselves. Okay, so we're shifting from the quote unquote negative or the disconnection emotions, and we're shifting into
Yes.
the connection and the positive. But it's not a this and now suddenly we're this. It's a cycle shift. It's like a
Hmm.
gradual thing. Does that make sense?
And something that's so important and what we struggle with, I think, as humans especially.
Mm,
You can hold multiple emotions in your body at one time.
mm,
So
mhm,
you can feel grief and love. And in
mhm.
fact, that is the alchemy.
Yeah.
I'm feeling pain in my solar plexus and a burst of like lightness and warmth in my chest. That's
Mhm.
love and grief. I'm
Mm,
feeling scared and excited.
mhm,
I'm feeling angry and powerful, right?
mm.
It's like, it's both.
Layered rather than just a spectrum of I'm over here or I'm over here, which I think is a lot of our fixing brain thinks of it like that. I'm either happy or
Yes,
sad. One is good, one is bad. Whereas what you're
correct.
describing is these layers of what it is to be human, what it is to be present,
Yes,
and what it is to accept and love where we are right now.
correct. Exactly. And truly, that's where deep presence comes from. And that's where feeling healed is feeling fully expressed,
Mm,
right? Like
yes.
I can fully express my emotional existence as a human and move through the states that come through me as life experiences me and I experience life. And I get to dance in the rhythm of that. This is what, very highly spiritual people are trying to attain, gurus, monks, etc. It's this like
Mhm,
ultimate acceptance of the state of being.
mhm,
That's what healing is. It's not only feeling joy and calm,
yeah.
right? It is. So this it's just that's my re-education, I think, for people is we really just have to be okay with the complexity of humanity and move through it. And the fear that we all have, all of us, myself included, is the perceived permanence of these disconnected states.
Mhm, mhm.
And recognizing the reason they're feeling so permanent is because you're missing the component of community and connection. And sometimes we're blocking ourselves from the alchemy of moving through what it actually means to kind of shift back into those other states. We're trying to
Mm.
get control, which is why
Yes.
we stay here.
Yes, I feel like it all keeps coming back to when we're talking about this, what is somatic healing, what is emotional alchemy? It all comes back to control versus acceptance. And what's the flip side of control? Because in a way you could say that, using these tools and learning how to support yourself to feel more stable and grounded is a form of control. But what would you call it instead? Would you call it like empowerment? Yeah, what would you call this?
Oh man, control is such a tricky word.
Yeah.
It's complex and multi-layered. I would say there's a difference between control as in yeah, I'd say control and power. So we'll say control is I need to hyperfixate on the things that I can take specific action on in order to know. I want to know that this is going to happen and this is going to happen and this is going to happen.
Right.
And then I'm going to feel safe, right?
Right. Hmm.
Versus power is in the acceptance and kind of the surrender, which is like, I can do these things
Hmm.
and they may or may not turn out the way I want them to.
Yeah.
But the choice I have, the actual control I have, the power I have is how I respond to what ends up happening. So it's like you can control your responses to a degree, but it's really about recognizing where your power is and where your power isn't. Control is a word that I think needs to be reworked. It's not one that actually leads to a lot of, it's a very patriarchal word,
Yes. Yes.
you know?
I agree.
So
Because
it's
like
messy.
the force rather than to, like you said, surrender, acceptance, love. So powerful. Oh
Yes.
my God, I love our conversation.
You can have discipline, you can have, but
Yeah.
it's like, it's just discernment. Those are better words. Discernment, discipline, responsiveness, control is like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Wonderful. Where can people kind of start with the emotional alchemy? What's kind of the beginner's point that someone could practice daily around emotional alchemy? Is it similar to like what we talked about with somatic, with taking a moment, taking that breath?
Yeah, I'd say emotional alchemy is about actually educating yourself about all the different layers of emotions and maybe
Yeah.
even finding new words, right? Like,
Mhm.
I do think there's a part of just dog is drinking water.
I
It's
get
so loud.
It's okay.
Yeah.
This is real life. People.
This is real life. Yes. My kids will be getting up soon too, so we should. But yeah, it comes back to understanding emotional words and the complexity of that and practicing naming it,
I was just going
right?
to say that, like
So,
recognizing what am I feeling or what is this
correct.
emotion? Okay. Yeah.
That's what I would start with some acceptance rather than shame.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you feel
Beautiful.
some shame. We have to work through that. It takes time.
Yeah. No, I love it. Thank you so much. This has been so incredible. And I know this is a really powerful conversation for us to be having in Pisces season. And as I said before we started recording, who better but a Pisces than to help teach us about healing and alchemy and all the things. Like, I just appreciate you so much. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you really wanted to share with people around these topics?
I mean, I could talk for days.
I
So I
know.
think we covered
We'll have a part
covered the
two.
basics. So yeah. Yes, exactly.
Good.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, how can people find you, first of all? And is there anything that you have coming up that you want to let us know about? So we're going to be thinking about sort of like late March time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything coming
Yep.
up? Hmm.
So you can find me on Instagram, The Evolved Therapist. I'm also on YouTube, and I think TikTok is the same name. I just haven't signed on there in a while. But Instagram is probably my main social for now.
Okay. Hmm.
And what I am really spending a lot of time in doing is two different things. I'm curating these 90-day containers for high achieving women to really recalibrate their nervous system and get to a place of fully expressed and being at home in their bodies so that they can, accept some of these bigger levels of success. Or if they have found success but are feeling super disconnected from relationships or still having those, people pleasing tendencies or burnout. I mean, just because you're successful doesn't mean you don't experience hard things, right?
Oh,
But
yeah. Hmm.
so I have this 90-day container. It's called the Unbound Woman. And it's really about how do I help, and it's a one-on-one container. How do I help you, get to a place where you can fully live in your life and be present in the ways that we've kind of talked about today. And then for those of you that are, just looking for kind of a place to connect and find a lot of these tools, I have a community called The Collective.
Oh, nice.
And that is launching its beta version March 1st. So
Perfect. So
the
people will be able to,
exactly.
yeah, go to your Instagram, find
Yes.
more. And if there's a link you want to share, we'll put it in the show notes. Oh, amazing.
Yes.
Good.
First month is free. So come in, check it out. If you like it, stay. If you don't, no cost to you. So it's really just about building a community of people doing this work so we can connect and share tools and kind of help one another through this year of change.
I love that. Oh, amazing. Everyone, make sure you go and follow Colleen on all the places and support her and her work. You're doing the things. You're helping us to do the things. So thank you so much for being our guest. This was a wonderful conversation and happy early birthday as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And we'll talk to everyone next time. Thank you for joining us.